I never imagined I'd be here, unearthing this story from the depths of my soul. My name is Emily. I'm 31 years old, and until 6 months ago, I saw myself as a woman completely satisfied with life. Married for 8 years to Nathan, a successful architect, our existence was what many would describe as ideal. We had a spacious house in a leafy neighbourhood, stable careers, and plans to start a family soon. But as they say, fate loves to play tricks. It all started when Nathan decided it was time to renovate our house's porch. "It'll be perfect for summer parties," he said, with that smile that won me over years ago. I agreed, of course. After all, who wouldn't want a new, elegant porch? Nathan hired a local construction company, and on the first day of the renovation, I met Ethan. Oh, Ethan. At 21, he was the embodiment of youth and vigour. Tall, broad-shouldered, with messy brown hair and honey-coloured eyes that seemed to shine with an almost hypnotic intensity. When he smiled and extended his hand to greet me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Butterflies in my stomach, trembling in my legs. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mom," he said, his deep voice echoing in my ears. "I'm Ethan, and I'll be leading the team renovating your porch." I swallowed hard, trying to maintain my composure. "The pleasure is mine, Ethan. Please, call me Emily." In the days that followed, I tried to keep my distance, immersing myself in my work as an editor for a fashion magazine. But it was impossible to ignore the sounds of the renovation, the constant hammering, the occasional laughter of the workers, and especially Ethan's voice giving instructions to his team. A week after the renovation began, Nathan had to travel for work. "It'll only be 2 weeks, my love," he said, kissing me softly before leaving. "Take care of the house and keep an eye on the renovation, okay?" I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and guilt. Relief at not having to hide my growing attraction to Ethan, and guilt for feeling that relief. The day after Nathan's departure, I decided to bring lunch to the workers. "It's the least I can do," I told myself, ignoring the inner voice that whispered other intentions. When I went out to the porch with a tray of sandwiches and fresh juice, Ethan was alone, measuring something with a tape measure. He turned when he heard me, and his face lit up with a smile that made my heart skip. "Emily, that's very kind of you," he said, approaching. "It's nothing," I replied, placing the tray on a makeshift table. "Where are the others?" "They went to get more materials," Ethan explained, taking a sandwich. "Just you and me for now." I felt my heart race at his words. We stood there, talking about trivialities while he ate. Ethan told me about his passion for carpentry, inherited from his grandfather. He talked about his dreams of one day having his own interior design company. "And you, Emily?" he asked, his honey-coloured eyes fixed on me. "What's your dream?" The question caught me off guard. When was the last time someone asked me about my dreams? When was the last time I thought about them myself? I don't know," I admitted, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "I guess I got a little lost along the way." Ethan moved closer, his hand lightly touching my arm. "It's never too late to rediscover yourself," he said softly. At that moment, looking into Ethan's eyes, I felt as if I were on the edge of an abyss. Part of me wanted to retreat, to return to the safety of what I knew, but another part, a part that I had suppressed for years, wanted to launch into the unknown. The sound of an approaching car broke the moment. Ethan stepped away quickly, and I went back inside, my heart beating erratically. That night, lying alone in the bed I shared with Nathan, I couldn't sleep. My mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. I loved my husband, of that I was sure. But was I still in love with him? And what did this attraction to Ethan mean? Was it just a passing fancy, or a sign that something was missing in my life? I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over Nathan's name in the contact list. Should I call him? tell him about these confused feelings. But what would I say? "Hi, honey. I just called to say I'm having inappropriate thoughts about the attractive carpenter you hired." I laughed bitterly at the idea, putting the phone back on the nightstand. No, I couldn't tell Nathan. At least not yet. First, I needed to understand what was happening to me. The following days were sweet torture. Every interaction with Ethan was charged with unresolved sexual tension. Our gazes met more frequently. Our conversations became more personal. I learned about his complicated childhood, raised by an aunt after losing his parents in an accident. He learned about my passion for photography, a dream I had abandoned in favour of a more stable career. One afternoon, as I watched Ethan work, he caught me looking. Instead of looking away, he smiled, a slow and seductive smile that made my stomach do somersaults. "Like what you see?" he asked, his voice low and husky. I felt my face burn. I was just admiring your work," I stammered, knowing it was a transparent lie. Ethan laughed, a rich and deep sound that reverberated in my chest. "Sure," he said, winking at me before returning to work. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't go on like this. The tension was consuming me, affecting my work, my sleep, my peace of mind. I needed to put an end to this, one way or another. The next day, I woke up early, determined to have a serious conversation with Ethan. I decided I would be honest about my feelings, but make it clear that nothing could happen between us. I loved Nathan, and I wouldn't throw away years of marriage for a passing attraction. I went out to the porch, my heart pounding in my chest. Ethan was already there, working alone again. "Ethan," I called, my voice trembling slightly. "Can we talk?" He turned, his face serious as he noticed my expression. "Sure, Emily. What is it?" I took a deep breath, gathering courage. I need to be honest with you. These past few days, I've been feeling..." But before I could finish, the sound of a horn interrupted us. We turned to see a familiar car parking in the driveway. Nathan was home. My heart stopped for a moment when I saw Nathan get out of the car. He looked tired, but smiled when he saw me. Ethan and I instinctively moved away from each other, as if we were guilty of something that hadn't happened yet. "Surprise!" Nathan exclaimed, approaching with his travel bag. "I managed to finish the project early and decided to come home." I forced a smile, trying to disguise the whirlwind of emotions consuming me. "That's great, honey. I missed you." I hugged Nathan, feeling a mixture of relief and disappointment. On one hand, his presence interrupted the dangerous moment with Ethan. On the other, I felt frustrated at not having had the chance to clarify things. "And how's the renovation going?" Nathan asked, turning to Ethan. "Very well, sir," Ethan replied, his voice professional and distant. "We're a bit ahead, actually." "Excellent." Nathan smiled, putting his arm around my waist. "Well, I won't keep you from your work. Shall we go inside, Em? I need a shower and I'm starving." I nodded, casting one last look at Ethan before following Nathan into the house. The young carpenter maintained a neutral expression, but his eyes told a different story. The following weeks were an exercise in self-control and dissimulation. With Nathan at home, opportunities to be alone with Ethan practically disappeared. Still, the tension between us was palpable. We exchanged furtive glances when Nathan wasn't around. Our hands brushed accidentally when we passed each other. One night, while Nathan was working late in his home office, I decided to bring a pitcher of lemonade to Ethan, who was working overtime to finish a detail on the porch. "I thought you might be thirsty," I said, handing him a glass. Ethan took the glass, his fingers brushing mine for longer than necessary. "Thank you, Emily. You're always so thoughtful." We stood in silence for a moment, the air between us charged with unspoken words. "Emily," Ethan began, his voice low and intense. About that day, before your husband came back. Ethan, please, I interrupted, my heart racing. We can't. I know, he said, taking a step towards me, but I can't stop thinking about you, about us. I closed my eyes, feeling the heat of his body close to mine. There is no us, Ethan. I'm married. I love my husband. Are you sure? He whispered, his hand lightly touching my face. At that moment, I heard Nathan's voice calling my name from inside the house. I quickly moved away from Ethan, my heart racing. Em, where are you? Out here, honey, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Just came to see how the porch progress is going. Nathan appeared at the door, smiling. Ah, great. Ethan, I hope my wife isn't bothering your work. Ethan forced a smile. Not at all, sir. Mrs. Emily has been very helpful. I felt my face burn with the double meaning of his words. Nathan, oblivious to the tension, just nodded. Well, we won't bother you anymore. Shall we, Em? I was thinking we could order pizza tonight. I followed Nathan inside, feeling Ethan's gaze burning on my back. The days that followed were a constant test of my willpower. Every time I saw Ethan, my body reacted in a way that scared and excited me at the same time. I tried to focus on my marriage, on Nathan, but it was as if a part of me had awakened and refused to go back to sleep. One afternoon, while I was working on an article for the magazine, I received a message on my cell phone. It was from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop on the corner at 3 p.m. My heart raced. How did Ethan get my number? Should I go? Part of me knew it was a bad idea, but another part yearned for this meeting. At 2:55 p.m, I found myself entering the coffee shop, my eyes anxiously searching for Ethan. He was already there, sitting at a table in the back, 2 cups of coffee in front of him. I thought you wouldn't come, he said when I sat down. I shouldn't have come, I replied, my voice trembling. Ethan reached out across the table, his fingers brushing mine. Emily, I know this is complicated, but what I feel for you, I've never felt this before. I closed my eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. Ethan, please. I'm married. I have a life. Commitments. And are you happy? He asked, his eyes fixed on mine. Truly happy? The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I loved Nathan, of that I was sure. But happiness? When was the last time I felt truly alive? Before I could answer, I saw a familiar figure passing by the coffee shop window. My blood ran cold. It was Sarah, Nathan's best friend. Shit, I muttered, lowering my head. We have to go. Now. Ethan, noticing my agitation, nodded. We hurriedly left through the back of the coffee shop, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm sorry, Ethan said when we were on the street. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I shook my head, emotions overwhelming me. This can't happen again, Ethan. We can't. But before I could finish the sentence, Ethan pulled me into a nearby alley, pressing me against the wall. His lips found mine in a desperate, passionate kiss. For a moment, I lost myself in the sensation, all the repressed desire exploding between us. Then, reality crashed down on me like a bucket of cold water. I pushed Ethan away, breathless. This was a mistake, I said, my voice choked. It can't happen again. I ran away, leaving Ethan behind, my mind a whirlwind of guilt, desire, and confusion. When I got home, I found Nathan in the living room, a strange expression on his face. Where were you? He asked, his voice calm but with a tone I didn't recognize. I went for coffee, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I needed some air. Nathan looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to read my soul. "Interesting," he finally said. "Sarah called me. Said she saw you at the corner coffee shop with Ethan." I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. The game of appearances had come to an end. And now I would have to face the consequences of my choices. The silence that followed Nathan's statement was deafening. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words seemed stuck in my throat. "It's not what you're thinking," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. Nathan laughed, a bitter sound I had never heard from him before. "And what exactly am I thinking, Emily? Why don't you tell me?" I felt my legs weaken and leaned against the wall. How could I explain something that I didn't even fully understand myself? "Nathan, I made a mistake. Ethan and we... You what?" Nathan interrupted, his voice rising. "Are you having an affair? Is that it?" "No!" I exclaimed, tears starting to fall. "It's not an affair. We kissed, just once. Today." Nathan closed his eyes, as if he had been physically hit by my words. When he opened them again, I saw a mixture of pain and anger that I had never witnessed before. "Why?" he asked, his voice now a hoarse whisper. "What did I do wrong?" His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "You didn't do anything wrong," I replied, taking a step towards him. He backed away, increasing the distance between us. "Nathan, please listen to me. I love you." It was a moment of weakness. I was confused, feeling... "Feeling what?" he demanded. "Bored? Unsatisfied? God, Emily, why didn't you talk to me?" Guilt consumed me. How could I explain that it wasn't about him, but about me? About a part of me that I had forgotten, or maybe never really known? "I don't know," I admitted, feeling small and pathetic. Ethan made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. As soon as the words left my mouth, I realized how cruel they were. Nathan staggered as if he had been slapped. "So that's it?" he said, his voice laden with pain. 8 years of marriage thrown away because of a boy who makes you feel young again? "No!" I shouted, desperate. "It's not like that, Nathan. Please, let me explain." But Nathan was already moving, grabbing his car keys and wallet. "I need some air," he muttered. "I don't know when I'll be back." "Nathan, wait!" I tried to reach him, but he was already out the door, the sound of the car leaving echoing in the quiet street. I collapsed on the couch, tears flowing freely now. How could I have been so stupid? How could I risk everything we had for a moment of passion? Hours passed. I tried calling Nathan countless times, but all calls went to voicemail. I sent messages, begged for forgiveness, but got no response. Around midnight, I heard a knock on the door. My heart leapt, thinking it might be Nathan, but when I opened it, I found Ethan on the other side. "What are you doing here?" I asked, nervously looking at the street behind him. "I needed to see how you were," he said, his eyes full of concern. "I tried calling you, but you didn't answer." "You can't be here," I whispered, trying to close the door. Ethan stopped it with his foot. "Emily, please. We can't leave things like this. What happened with your husband?" I felt a wave of anger wash over me. "What happened? He found out about us, Ethan. My marriage is falling apart and it's all our fault." Ethan backed away, the pain evident on his face. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. But Emily, what we feel for each other..." "Stop!" I shouted, pushing him out. "There is no us, Ethan. There never was. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake." I slammed the door shut, leaning against it and sliding to the floor. Outside, I heard Ethan call my name once before his footsteps faded away. The following hours were a blur of regret and self-recrimination. I reviewed every moment of the past few months, every decision that led me to this point. How could I have been so selfish, so reckless? As the sun began to rise, I heard the sound of a car parking. I ran to the window, my heart racing as I saw Nathan getting out of the vehicle. He looked exhausted, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and slumped shoulders. I opened the door before he could use his key. We stood staring at each other for a long moment, the air heavy with unspoken words. "Nathan, He raised his hand, interrupting me. "Don't say anything yet. I spent the entire night thinking, Emily, about us, about our marriage, about everything." I swallowed hard, expecting the worst. "I love you," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "And I want to believe that you love me too. But what happened? I can't simply pretend it didn't happen." "I know," I replied, tears returning to my eyes. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to fix this." He nodded slowly. "We're going to need help, Em. Couples therapy, maybe. And you're going to have to be completely honest with me. About everything." I felt a glimmer of hope. "Anything," I repeated. "I love you, Nathan, more than anything in the world." He stepped forward, pulling me into a tight embrace. I felt his tears wetting my shoulder as he whispered, "We'll get through this together." As we hugged, I realized this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey. There would be tears, arguments, and moments of doubt. But there, in Nathan's arms, I promised myself that I would do everything in my power to rebuild the trust I had broken. The sun continued to rise on the horizon, marking the beginning of a new day and, hopefully, a new chapter in our lives. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was determined to walk it, step by step, alongside the man I truly loved.